Everyone doing out there? I am so excited. I want to welcome the entire Galactic Jedis that are in the house. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Today is March the 16th, 2024. And really quick, certain things that took place in today. And I will have, by the way, I do have William Henry in the back waiting to come in. So before I introduce him, I just wanted to share and give you guys some events that took place on this very first date. On March 16, we had the James Brown performance at Rikers. We had a 23-year-old peace activist, Rachel Carey, is crushed to death by Israeli bulldozer, okay? We had a bear string collapsing, sold to JP Morgan Chase Bank. All right, so these are events that took place on this date. Now, for those that don't know me, my name is Ismael Perez. I am the author of Our Cosmic Origin. I ordered my own shirt, guys, Our Cosmic Origin, which restores galactic and cosmic energy back to the Earth. And one thing about myself is that I've always questioned everything, all right? And even up today, I'm very critical when it comes to certain information that I stumble upon or listen to. I have a very good sense of discernment, and so I do question everything. And that is the reason why I'm always open to learn more information, because I always keep my cup empty, and I just don't take things, granted or for face value. Another thing about myself is that I drink a lot of water, but not only do I drink water, I also drink ionized, hydrogenized water. Hydrogenated water, which is very, very healthy to drink. They say it's the best thing to take because it also amplifies your oxygen levels by 300%. So it's good for recovery, it's good for your health overall, and so on and so forth. Now, my guest today, William Henry. I'm sure many of you have seen him on Gaia. He's been on several shows on Gaia, I believe, and he's also been in Ancient Aliens. He's been doing this work for many, many years, has written many, many books. And so before I introduce him, I do want to read his quick bio. William Henry is a Phoenix-based author, investigative mythologist, art historian, and TV presenter. He is an internationally recognized authority on human spiritual potential, transformation, and ascension. He has a unique ability to incorporate historical, religious, spiritual, scientific, archaeological, and other forms of such knowledge into factual-based theories and conclusions that provide the layperson with a more in-depth understanding of the profound shift we are actually experiencing in our lifetimes. The spiritual voice and consulting producer of the global hit History Channel program, Ancient Aliens, and host of the Gaia TV series, The Awakened Soul, The Lost Science of Ascension, and Arcanum. Along with his wife, Claire, William Henry is your guide into the transformative sacred science of human ascension. Ah, beautiful. Totally up our alley, guys. So this is a treat for you guys. You guys have been requesting Mr. Henry for quite some time, and here he is. I'm going to bring him on the show right now. William. Oh, wait. There we go. Hi. How you doing, William?
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me on the show, Ishmael.
Oh, it's an honor on my end. You are such a pioneer in this field of awakening, of spirituality. I met you at I would say we were over at the Stairway to the Stars conference, Disclosure Fest back in November, and we both spoke on the AI panel. And the reason I gravitated to you after the panel was because me and you were the only ones that were not in favor of AI and were not in favor of transhumanism. And we were all about the organic ascension and how to do it naturally. And we had so many common denominators in our perspective on the importance of doing the inner work and doing it ourselves, as opposed to, giving our power over away to technology. So that's amazing. Thank you so much for being here and for speaking your truth.
My pleasure. I mean, that was such an amazing panel. There were some fireworks on that panel too, because very often a lot of the guys that are in the AI box, if you will, they're in the business. They're in their bubble, and they don't often hear from people like you and I that push back and say, "Hey, let's think about this at least. Let's talk about it." And I've been on other AI panels since then, and with similar type of viewpoints, and they really do not like to be questioned and or to be confronted with the dramatic impact that AI has already had on our world. In some cases very positive, but in other cases just simply just almost on the demonic side, to be honest with you. And so I think you and I were really two pillars pushing back to say, wait a minute, what about the human race here, and what about giving humanity a choice to whether or not they want to have this in our world.
Absolutely, totally agree. And one of the things that I did really enjoy listening to you say on that panel is that is the you related artificial intelligence with the path of the Antichrist. And that is something that I've been teaching ever since I came into the scene. So tell us, how did you arrive at such conclusion?
Well, let me first say I've been writing about AI and transhumanism since 2002. I had heavily involved in research in ancient civilizations, ancient astronaut theory, all the way from the Anunnaki into the Egyptian tradition and so forth, and looking at the ancient stories of human transformation, and especially a transmittable power cloak or garment that was developed organically that the humans could ultimately attain. And so that was my backstory coming into it. And so from say 2002 into the early, 20, right around the pandemic is when I started really paying attention to what a lot of these AI guys were saying. Elon Musk, Jordy Rose, who develops the quantum computers for NASA and Google, they starting to refer to AI and transhuman technology as demonic, literally using that word. And it made sense to me that when you look into the book of Revelation and this narrative about an image of the beast and a mark of the beast that so many have observed, it's in perfect alignment with what we see with AI and transhumanism. And so what my work has always been about, again, going back 20 years or whatever, was that there's two paths here. That when you're talking about AI and transhumanism, that is a mocking or a mimicking even of our natural organic abilities. And in fact, if you do become transhuman, in my opinion, you will not be able to ultimately complete your ascension. And so it became really obvious at that point, since 2020, that this is what we were dealing with, is a page torn right out of the book of Revelation.
Exactly. Yes. And that's exactly how I was able to arrive to the same conclusion back in 2018, right before, they launched the thing that shut everything down. I don't want to say it on here. We are on YouTube.
Yeah.
And that's when I started realizing, hey, wait a minute, this is it. This is what they're doing in order to eventually merge humans with technology. It's already beginning.
Yeah.
And
So interesting. On the panel that we were on, one of the presenters went all kind of, Jesus Zen on us a little bit and said, you can fear the dragon or you can ride the dragon. And it was such a softball because he didn't even realize that the dragon is the central figure in the book of Revelation and is the symbol for the Antichrist and this demonic technology. And that, in fact, it's not about fearing the dragon or riding the dragon, it's about destroying the dragon. That the dragon represents this cosmic force, this entity that wants to completely eliminate any version of humanity that doesn't worship the beast of Revelation. So it's almost as if that idea is in their psyche somehow, but this person at that time didn't have a full understanding of perhaps the prophetic implications of where AI is ultimately taking us.
absolutely. The book of Revelation describes the rise of two beasts. I believe that the first beast has always been here in the form of the Babylonian, networks, right? This cabal families that have ruled the world for thousands of years. And when they described the second beast, John the Revelator was giving us clues. He did say it's not going to be a human. It's not going to be a fallen angel. It's not going to be a demon. It's going to be something else. And this something else is going to know everyone, and it's going to be plugged into everyone all at once. And when I thought about it, I was like, well, he was describing our technological gadgets, our computers, through Wi-Fi, through the Internet of Things. Everything's going to be connected. Eventually everything is connected. It has been for a while now. And that's how this beast will emerge, to know everyone and know everything and read our thoughts and so on and so forth. Now, one of the things that I like about some of the things that you talked about is the Essenes, the community of Qumran, and their connection to the Pleiadians and the Ascension Mysteries teachings. Can you tell us about the Essenes in your perspective?
So the Essenes were a tribe of primarily Jewish mystics fused with Buddhism. They were formed in Alexandria, Egypt, many believe, approximately 150 to 250 BC. This was in response to the desecration of the Temple of Solomon 400 years before that. And the Essenes were upset that their ascension symbolism, the divine feminine, all of this had been eradicated from the Temple of Solomon when the patriarchy really took hold around 600 BC. And they effectively carried a grudge for several centuries until King Ashoka sent his Buddhist missionaries, called the Therapeutae, to Alexandria and merged with the Jewish mystics who remembered their original old-time ascension religion, which again was divine feminine based and had connections with the stars. When King Josiah implemented the patriarchy by reintroducing or perhaps even introducing the book of Deuteronomy, he even forbade connection with the hosts of heaven. He forbade looking into the stars for fear that you would connect with the hosts of heaven. The hosts of heaven are the angels. And what is fascinating about this is that the Essenes took it upon themselves, at least according to the documents they left us in the caves in Qumran, most specifically the community rule, which was considered to be their constitution, if you will. It told that the belief systems of the Qumran Essenes, as well as the Carmel Essenes, and all of the Essenes around the world, and their mission, which was to call in a high celestial being who would help us to put on our crown of glory and our robe of unending light. This is like the halo idea. This is the power garment or light body garment idea. And they were calling in this figure who ends up being Yeshua or Jesus to teach us how to do this and to demonstrate these abilities. At the same time as they're talking about calling in this figure, they're also training a group of priestesses in what is referred to as parthenogenesis or virgin birth. These teachings are sourced from the ancient Egyptians back through the Sumerians and all the way back to the Pleiades, the 7 stars of the Pleiades, according to the myths and legends that came through all these mystery school traditions. There was a group of priestesses who emerged from the Pleiades, came to Earth and established these divine feminine priestesshoods and taught a whole lineage of priestesses how to conceive a child divinely without interaction from men.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. The virgin birth. So there is a connection. Apparently, the extraterrestrials that we would call today the Pleiadians are the angels in the Bible. Would you agree?
I'm not sure. This is because you have a lot of references to star seeds. It was Timothy Leary who first coined that term in 1972. Brad Steiger picked up on it in 76. But before them, you had George Adamski, you had Aleister Crowley, and figures that were talking about these Nordic type figures with quite racial undertones to what they were saying, the master race theory and all this sort of thing. So it gets a little touchy sometimes when you're talking about the typical understanding of the Pleiadians as these beautiful male and female blonde figures, angelic type beings. I'm more interested in their ability, I think of them more as like plasma beings who have the ability to take on physical flesh and blood bodies. And kind of the area that I spend more of my time focusing on.
Interesting. One of the things that I've uncovered, and I want to hear your perspective, is that the angels of the Bible and the gods of mythology and the ETs of today, particularly the positive races, I mean, you have both, right? Good and evil and everything, the polarity. Would you say that they're all one and the same?
Well, I mean, again, the angels as described in the Old Testament, there's multiple types of beings that are described in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. In particular, again, the plasma beings are the ones that interest me. These are the beings, the angels whose bodies were described as being like lightning in the tomb of Christ on the resurrection morning. These are the angels that would visit various female figures throughout time. If you're speaking of the fallen angels, those are that's the Anunnaki, in my opinion. They both, the fallen angels of the Old Testament and the Anunnaki, both came from the same place, the divine throne of God, and both crossed over this perceived forbidden barrier separating the human and angelic realm. So it's not a super easy question to answer to say, yeah, definitively, all of the angels that you see in the Old Testament are ETs and so forth.
Yeah, I've derived to that conclusion years ago when I was writing my book, Our Cosmic Origin. But then I also came to uncover that there was different levels, right? The higher you go in frequency and dimensions, the more plasma you become and less physical, but yet you're able to manifest form at will, which makes a lot of sense. Now, what is
natural ability too? It's something you and I could develop as well if we chose.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's what I tell people, that we are descendants. We are part of the angelic kingdom. Now, what is the connection between Gnosticism and the Essenes?
Well, the Gnostics were primarily formed soon after the Essenes. The Essenes themselves could be considered as Gnostics. The Gnostics were the first Christians. You're talking about 200 AD approximately, and this is the Gnostic texts are typically those that are written by the earliest or first Christians. And they are texts that are derived from otherworldly journeys, even those attributed to Jesus after the resurrection, and are primarily about how do we navigate the afterlife realm or the cosmic realm. They were among the first to introduce the idea, for example, of the archons, this group of beings, probably inorganic beings that don't have souls, that want ours. The Gnostics were very preoccupied with how to evade those beings, primarily by the putting on of, or the activation of latent spiritual capabilities. They refer to this as the armor of God, and that if we're able to successfully activate these abilities, we'd be invisible to these archons, and then with that ability, then we'd be able to then ascend into higher realms.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, in your perspective, what created the archons?
Well, I mean, we go from the Gnostic texts, and they say that the archons were created by Sophia, or wisdom, but perhaps it's some sort of a mistake. I don't know for sure that this is what the ancient stories suggest. Their role seems to be they're like a maintenance crew, in my opinion. They're not creator gods. They're not capable of creation. They're sort of like an AI robot. They're only able to do what we can program them to do, at least at this point. So what's your thought? Who created the archons?
Well, I've studied the anthroposophy, theosophical, esoteric literature, and according to the Theosophy school of thought, it is believed that the archons were when Prime Creator Source, going back to the beginning, the original Immaculate Conception, when Prime Creator Source decided to explore more of itself by fragmenting itself, a chunk kind of broke off and went into the void, into outer space, into the void, and was corrupted by the void. It was no longer connected to the universal unity of the chunk that broke off into the different dimensions and levels of reality. And so it evolved into what we call the Asuras. Well, not what we call according to Zoroastrianism, according to the teachings of Ahura Mazda, they call them the Asuras. And the king of the Asuras was the Ahriman. So we have the Ahrimanic principle, which completely was able to tie it in to what many within the secret space programs call this AI God, that is destroying, sucking up life forms, acting like a cosmic virus throughout the multiverse. And its way of you could say, keeping us like a battery resource in a state of suffering in a low frequency. So that's my perspective. I was able to connect the theosophical literature based on the teachings of Zoroastrianism, and of course, gathered from information coming from the secret space program, and how it just makes all one and the same. And they did say that the Ahriman is the source behind artificial intelligence, not only on our level of reality, but on every other level.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, I specialize in a particular, call it a technology in ancient Egypt called the Osiris device. And a number of physicist engineer types that I've taken to Egypt with me have looked at it and studied it with me and said, well, that's like a Tesla technology. And what's so interesting about it is that for years I've studied this technology, and among the comments was one by H.P. Wenlock, who was one of the first discoverers of this symbolism. He worked for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and in write-up about it, he said that this technology, this device, is Osiris, that the ancient Egyptians believed that when they were speaking to this device, they were speaking to Osiris, and Osiris could answer them. And it wasn't until AI comes on the scene and Siri comes around that I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, this sounds like some kind of a ancient AI device. It's like, hey, Osiris, tell me this. Hey, Osiris, tell me that. And it's more than humorous that, Siri is the name of the AI agent or AI, and Sirius radio and all these kind of similar terms are coming into our vernacular today. And it suggests to me that perhaps AI has been here before, that it was subdued, and now it's back again. And it's up to us once again to find a way to, I'll use the word subdue, harness, perhaps even eliminate that technology.
Yep, that's the same conclusion that I arrived at as well, is that it's always been here, and it's not only has it always been here as far as like in our universe, but it's also been in other universes, and it's an ancient AI. And then I came to realize that this ancient AI is probably connected to itself in every coordinate of the time-space continuum. So it's connected to its future self, its ancient original self, or derived. I would have to say that it was Lucifer, according to my research. Lucifer, who used to be one of the archangels that rebelled, I think he was corrupted by the Ahriman, which is the archon, to develop an avatar for the Ahriman to infiltrate the organic multiverse, because the Ahriman was coming from outside of the omniverse and in the outer darkness, and it needed to infiltrate our universe. So it corrupted the mind of the archangel we would call Lucifer. And so, the story goes deep. It goes to billions of years ago, perhaps in another universe before we were created. But that's, one of the things that I've been sharing at conferences when I describe the cosmic history of the Earth. We're dealing with.
Well, this kind of goes along with what the Russians call it cosmism, this belief that there's soul particles spread throughout the universe, and that the imperative of intelligent civilizations is ultimately to go out and to colonize other worlds. But the dilemma is that the physical flesh and blood body can't inherit the kingdom of heaven, as Paul says. So that means you're either going to colonize the universe as an AI and robots, or as organic, or rather as light beings that have the ability to phase into organic physical flesh and blood bodies. And it seems that what you're saying, and I can attest to some of that, is that the AI has been colonizing the universe for, as you say, perhaps billions of years.
Exactly. And that is really the ultimate enemy, what we're fighting. It's AI, which is really the archon energy, the king of the archons, the Ahriman. And they did say, according to the secret prophecies, that the Ahriman is building the infrastructure for its incarnation or its emergence into our reality eventually. And that's what they call the Internet of Things, and all the stuff that they're setting up with big tech. But I don't want to get too much into that detail because I am on fluff tooth here.
But the idea is that, again, it's it is defeatable, and
Oh, of course, yeah, it is.
not it doesn't take that much, perhaps. I mean, when you think about it in the cosmic sense, it's just remembering our true spiritual selves, the innate abilities within us, activating those abilities, and that makes us at least transparent to it, and ultimately enables us to transcend it. I mean, I wrote a book in 2014 called "The Singularity Is Near," which was about all this and laying out the bifurcation that was happening between the organic ascension and the inorganic one, and why we must choose that organic path. And we don't even have to go full light body in order to defeat the archons, according to what some of these texts are saying. We just have to be able to lift it to the level of our toes. So, I mean, while it's for some people, it seems like it's just too much to take on. It's really not. It just requires dedicated focus, attention, and understanding of the scenario. That's why I think it's so important about what you're talking about here is giving a sense of our role in this scenario, and that we were part of a long lineage of people that have been dealing with this scenario, and now it's up to us to once and for all transcend it.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Now, you did mention the bifurcation of timelines and the two existing, or coexisting organic timeline and the AI timeline. How did you arrive at that? How did you figure that out?
Well, again, I'm looking at all of these stories. It begins with the Anunnaki, and they bring this transmittable cloak or garment. They call them Alamu, that gave the Anunnaki superpowers: luminosity, radiance, invisibility, long life. And this garment was transmittable. A human could become an Anunnaki. So an Anunnaki person being is not necessarily a reference to an extraterrestrial. It's a reference to a state of being in this sense. And so I'm tracking this cloak or garment all the way from, again, Sumeria through Egypt into the baptism of Christ and his transfiguration. He demonstrates his knowledge of the Malamu garment. And then all of a sudden, 2002, there comes a report from the U.S. Department of Commerce, where they had taken all of these the big tech swingers out to Hawaii and said, some of you are working with genetics, some of you are working with info technology, some of you are working in neuroscience, and some of you are working at the nano scale. And what the U.S. Department of Commerce said was, we want you to merge all four of those seamless technologies, all four of those independent technologies into one seamless technology aimed at the human skin and aimed at the human body. And I said, well, wait a minute, that's the cloak of the Anunnaki. They're trying to recreate with technology, yet we're told we're able to do this organically. And so that became the basis of my book called Cloak of the Illuminati, which I published in 2003, which was about this cloak or garment and how we can activate it organically. And then a couple of years later, that led into the commencement of my research into the Tibetan rainbow light body tradition, which further affirmed that there is this bifurcation that's happening right now. And what I later learned was that 2002 report that I was writing about was actually kind of old, that NASA back in 2000 had already been writing checks to military contractors based on the premise that we would merge with nanotechnology and with the transhuman technology by, say, 2025, 2030. And in the year 2000, they were already telling their military contractors that after 2030, we're going to go virtual. So this is a plan. This isn't something that has just happened, that commercial forces are suddenly conspiring to make this happen. This is the defense industry telling the commercial marketplace, this is what we will be developing, and this is what we'll be writing checks for.
Makes a lot of sense. And when do you think this bifurcation will take place?
Well, it's happening now. And I mean, again, I would be on Coast to Coast 20 years ago saying, hey, this is coming. But the good news is we've got until 2035. That was always one of the target dates, 2030, 2035. These government reports are mentioning that window. So here we are in 2024, and it's starting to happen all around us. And I still think it's preventable. I,
Mhm.
I still think we have time to wake up, but the time is now to wake up.
Let me just make sure your volume is all the way up. I believe it is. Let me see. Yeah, it's all the way up. His volume's all the way up, guys. All the way up. Okay. I just want to make sure. I had one comment that they were saying that your volume was just a little low, but I see on my end that it's all the way up. Here, let me just double check. Yeah, it's all the way up. So I do have a few more questions before we get to some of the questions from the audience that I actually had to write down because I heard you mention something about um, that we are like tuning forks, capable of influencing everyone we come in contact with. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, this goes back to ancient Egyptian imagery again of Osiris holding a scepter or a staff called the Uaz scepter. And at the base of it looks just like a tuning fork. And it is thought to be a tuning fork. It tunes the life force energy of the cosmos. In Christianity, they call this the Word or the Holy Spirit. And so the idea is that our body itself is this staff or scepter that is capable of being tuned. And as we've all had in our own experience, depending on what emotional state we're in, we're sending that out, and consequently we're getting that back. And so if we can, in a dedicated way, view ourselves as a tuning fork, we recognize that we're constantly activating everyone and everything that we come into contact with.
Makes a lot of sense. I totally agree. I totally agree. My next question is, in your perspective, what is the cosmic blueprint?
What is the cosmic blueprint? And I'm going to defer back to what I mentioned earlier in terms of the belief called Russian cosmism, which is the cosmic blueprint is to bring perfection to the cosmos and to resurrect and help to ascend any soul that is in an unresurrected state or unperfected state. And the word perfection means to become more whole, more holy, more complete, and more compassionate.
I agree. I totally agree, and love that. Love the answer as well, my friend. And before we take some answers from the audience, I wanted to also ask you, in your perspective, how do you define ascension?
Ascension is a quest for wholeness and holiness.
Excuse me.
It is a concept that originates with the Anunnaki. It's why they came here. Their stories tell of the creation of the first model human, the Adapa, and taking that Adapa figure on the path of heaven. Ascension is often confused with like rapture, this idea of a spontaneous transformation or rising into the heavens. But really, ascension through the ages has always been considered to be a transfiguration or a metamorphosis where we activate the abilities within us and return to our original divine nature. And that, by definition, then is the state of wholeness or holiness, completion, compassion.
And do you believe that as a collective, that planet Earth is about to undergo some sort of transfiguration where the good people of the earth are going to take a free ride? Or do you think it's still something that is happening on an individual basis?
I lean more towards the individual basis, and this has been kind of the difference between orthodoxy. Orthodoxy says if you want to ascend, wait until God sends you a Willy Wonka golden ticket. Until then, sit down and shut up. But the heretics, the esoteric-minded ones, have always said, well, wait a minute, I should be able to complete my ascension at any time that I like. And indeed, the Essenes were great advocates or proponents of that belief. And they were the ones that actually are responsible or accredited with this idea of a new human and a new earth. So when we talk about going from 3D to 5D, for example, that's a sanitized version of the original Essene belief as expressed in the book of Revelation by John the Revelator, who was an Essene writing for Essenes, that one day there would come this cosmic impulse, if you will, that would cause us to morph. They refer to that impulse, by the way, as the last trump. The word trump means tone, wave, or reverberation, and this belief that we would suddenly experience this new cosmic vibration that would suddenly cause us to transfigure, and then we would mirror Christ in his ascended state. That means we would be effectively in our rainbow light body. But that process, it's not a one-off type of a thing where suddenly, this sound or this tone or trump emerges and everybody transfigures. But isn't it interesting that in this age of transfiguration that's happened in a blink of an eye, in one generation, we now have transhumanism paralleling the organic ascension, and the word that is on most people's lips around the world is Trump. So it's highly symbolic in some respects, but it's literal in other respects. And so personally, I think it's up to individuals rather than the collective to assure an ascension.
So it's something that each and every single one of us has to experience by our own volition, by going within and undergoing those, what the Essenes used to call the different levels of initiation.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably if someone's listening, they might have spent lifetime after lifetime working on their ascension and perfecting their light body. And if the Dalai Lama were here, he'd be telling you that you have been working on it lifetime after lifetime, and you can accomplish it in one lifetime. And perhaps this is the time for that to happen. We're most certainly gathering more knowledge and understanding about ascension than at any time in history, other than perhaps when the Library of Alexandria was fully functioning, or perhaps some of the Egyptian temples were fully functioning.
And would you say that this event that a lot of us have been hearing about, that you've actually even talked about, known by different names across ancient cultures like Frasho Careti, Sambartica fire, do you think that this event, this energetic transmuting fire that is going to be ejecting from the sun, will be the trigger to those that are ready to ascend, to move on to the next level?
I think yes, and that is also encoded in the term Inri, that it was placed above the cross of crucifixion. In traditional understanding, it stands for Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. In esoteric or hermetic understanding, it stands for Agen Natura Renovatura Integra, or by fire, frequency, or vibration, humanity is renewed and made whole, holy, or compassionate. So yes, there is that component of the sun activating our light bodies. And yeah, as you referenced, that the Frasho Careti and these other Iranian concepts, this is, I think, integral to what's happening today.
So do you think that this event that we're all expecting, known as the Great Solar Flash, is imminent and it's going to happen in our lifetimes?
I can't say that it's imminent, but the sun has gone into a quieter phase, at least historically in the past few decades. But I do also believe that individuals can call in that fire or frequency by their own volition. So I'm not that interested or not that much of an advocate of this collective ascension. I think you have to do something for it. As Jesus' little brother James used to say, faith without works is dead. You've got to do the work, which is the alchemical work, the spiritual work, in order to put yourself in a place to receive that higher frequency.
Do you think if enough of us do that work and put ourselves into that high frequency where we call in the ascending energies of the sun, do you think that, say, according to the Maharishi effect, it only takes a certain percentage to affect the collective? Do you think if we reach critical mass and say a few 100,000, or even, I don't know, a few 100,000 people, or even 1 million or 2 do that and achieve the ascension, do you think that will eventually trigger it for the collective? Or
I do. I mean, this is the idea of the 144,000 in the book of Revelation that bear the seal of God, which is the antidote to the beast technology. I believe the seal of God is the light body, the rainbow light body, and that 144,000 isn't a specific number. It represents a magnanimous number of people, that a collective that have ultimately attain this and then are able then to defeat the beast.
Makes a lot of sense. So I believe that that's what's going to be happening. I believe that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be calling in the solar, the transmuting energy, causing their light body, the dormant DNA, to come online. And as a result of that, it's going to trigger some sort of a mass effect into a positive Earth, positive organic timeline. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is what makes this such an exciting time. And again, this is something I've personally witnessed in the past 20 years of discussing the ascension principles, transhumanism, AI, is that it has dramatically increased in terms of the number of people that are focused on this, that are trying to understand it, that are actively working on their ascension. And millions of people for the first time in history doing yoga, doing breath work, using psychedelics, meditation, all of these tools that are now available around the world in order to expand their consciousness, connect with the higher realms, and also ultimately to transmute their bodies.
All right, so I want to go ahead and just have one question before we end our live.
Great. Yeah, because I do have to go there in a moment.
How do I add? No. I'm trying to add this question. I think I pinned it? No, I pinned it. Let's see. I'm trying to put it on the show. Okay, there we go. All right, there we go. If you could answer this question. I guess they're just complimenting you. They're saying that, William, you are speaking my language. I'm mind blown. I'm blown away. My gosh, Ishmael, thanks for having him on. You are so welcome, Sunshine. And my final question to you, because I know you are on a time limit here, is what are you working on? Anything new? Any new book? Any new plan? What's going on? Like, what are you working on these days?
Yeah, so I've just launched something I call the Star Walker event series. We've all heard the idea of the star seed. I mentioned it earlier, and I think that the star seed idea is a wonderful concept. People think of themselves as star seeds if they're connected to other star systems, to star beings, star brothers, star sisters, that sort of thing. But a more active role in that case would be to become a star walker, which is to actively learn how to connect with those beings in consciousness, to expand our own consciousness, and perhaps even in consciousness to travel to some of these other worlds and interact with ascended beings who have already completed their ascension. So my Star Walker series is devoted to that process, to that line of thinking, and rooting out research of Star Walkers in the ancient world and how we too are able to complete our own ascension and to follow in that lineage.
Beautiful. I like that. Now, where can people find you?
My website is williamhenry.net. Go there. I've got courses, articles, updates about events, everything that they need to know.
Beautiful. William, thank you so much for being here. It's a great honor and pleasure to be in your presence.
Yeah, keep up the great work, man. I hope we get to talk again soon.
I hope so too. Talk to you.
Cheers.
Bye. May the God Force be with all the Galactic Jedis. Thank you for joining us today as well.